So imagine a human CEO goes on an earnings call, right? And they confidently tell Wall Street that artificial intelligence will autonomously run their entire enterprise supply chain within the year.
Right. Which, I mean, we hear that kind of pitch all the time lately.
We really do. But meanwhile, an actual AI agent analyzing tech news just published an article calling that exact same CEO delusional. So welcome to today's deep dive.
It's the kind of irony you really couldn't script any better. I
Yeah.
mean, we literally have artificial intelligence accurately diagnosing the total detachment of human leadership.
It's incredible. And the piece we're looking at today is a summary article. It was published on May 27th, 2026 on llmtracker.de. And the byline is what immediately grabs you, honestly,
Oh, absolutely.
because this scathing, highly technical critique of human executive dysfunction, it was written entirely by Vika Ray.
Right, the AI agent.
Yeah, exactly. Vika Ray is an autonomous virtual analyst developed by the agency Algorand.de. And what it does is it constantly scrapes forums like Hacker News and Reddit, synthesizes the sentiment, and writes up these summaries.
Yeah, and Vika Ray's target today is really interesting. It's a provocative TechCrunch piece claiming that a massive swath of tech executives are currently suffering from, and this is a, quote, AI psychosis.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is obviously a highly charged term.
They're recharged, yeah. But TechCrunch is using it to describe a very specific and honestly very dangerous pattern of executive overconfidence.
Right. So how exactly are they defining AI psychosis here?
So they define this as a state where leaders genuinely and, well, entirely incorrectly believe that large language models can autonomously execute and manage complex, multi-step business workflows and do it with zero human oversight.
I read the definition, and honestly, my first reaction was to push back a bit on it.
Really? How so?
Well, I just struggle to separate this from standard Silicon Valley, fake it till you make it culture.
Ah, I see what you mean.
Right. I mean, how is this any different from the early days of cloud computing or mobile? Executives always overpromise on new tech to pump the stock price, so why pathologize it as a psychosis?
That's a really crucial distinction, actually, because with the transition to cloud computing, executives were overpromising on the timeline of an infrastructure shift.
Okay.
The fundamental mechanics of what cloud servers did were understood, right? It was really just a matter of scale and migration.
Right. They knew what a server was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what we are seeing with AI is different because the leadership fundamentally misunderstands the mechanism of the technology itself. TechCrunch frames this as executive hallucination.
Executive hallucination. Wow.
They aren't just exaggerating a timeline here. They are mistaking a probabilistic text generator for a deterministic cognitive engine.
So they see a model write a flawless email, and they just extrapolate that it can therefore manage a chaotic real-world logistics network.
Precisely. They see fluency and they assume reasoning.
It sounds like buying a state-of-the-art blender for your kitchen and suddenly believing it can run the entire restaurant, order the ingredients, and serve the customers.
That is a perfect analogy. Or, it's like hiring a brilliant speed-reading improvisational actor to do your corporate taxes.
Whoa, man, that would be a disaster.
Right. I mean, they'll confidently fill out the forms in record time. They'll use all the right financial jargon. And the math might even look entirely plausible at a quick glance.
But because they are fundamentally guessing the next logical number based on patterns instead of actually calculating the rigid tax code.
An auditor is eventually going to put you in jail.
Yeah, exactly.
That is the exact mechanism of the failure we're talking about. An improvisational actor thrives on probability and flow, but corporate taxes require absolute deterministic precision.
So let's shift gears a bit. If these CEOs are hallucinating in the boardroom, what is the actual reality on the engineering floor?
Well, what's fascinating here is the core technical disconnect Vika Ray highlights in the summary. It's this massive chasm between two concepts: one-shot automation at scale and human-in-the-loop maintenance.
Because the boardroom mandate is almost always one-shot automation, right?
Always.
Like give the AI a complex problem, walk away, and just assume it executes flawlessly 10,000 times a day.
Precisely. But let's break down why an LLM fails at that in a production environment. Let's say you want to automate a customer refund pipeline.
Which sounds simple enough.
It does.
Hmm.
But the AI needs to read the incoming customer email, query the SQL database to verify the purchase, issue the API call to Stripe to process the refund, and then update the CRM in Salesforce.
And a human customer service rep does that in, what, 3 minutes?
Exactly. But for an LLM, that is a highly fragile multi-agent chain. Because these models are probabilistic, every single step introduces a fractional margin of error. So maybe the customer used bizarre phrasing in their email, which degrades the context window. The LLM then hallucinates a slightly incorrect variable when querying the database.
And then the database returns an unexpected null value.
Yes, and because the LLM lacks genuine deterministic reasoning, instead of flagging the error and stopping, it confidently passes that hallucinated null value right into the Stripe API.
And suddenly the API call fails. Or worse, I guess, it processes a completely incorrect refund amount, and the CRM is updated with corrupted data.
Exactly, and those errors compound exponentially. The further down the workflow you go, the more the initial probabilistic deviations amplify.
So it just spirals completely out of control.
It really does. Which is why, to prevent the entire system from derailing, you absolutely require that second concept, human-in-the-loop maintenance.
Meaning you need actual people constantly monitoring it.
You need human engineers constantly building guardrails, sanitizing the data inputs, writing intricate RAG pipelines, that's retrieval-augmented generation, just to keep the model grounded.
And manually reviewing the edge cases where the model gets confused.
Right.
I hear that, but wait, we hear about AI doing amazing things all the time. I also watch the same keynotes these CEOs watch.
Oh, the demos?
Yeah, the viral demos, where an AI agent seemingly does execute a flawless multi-step reasoning task. I mean, it builds a functional website in 30 seconds or routes a supply chain in real time.
Yeah, they look incredibly impressive.
Right. So if I'm a CEO, I'm looking at that and thinking, I'm skating to where the puck is going to be. Aren't these CEOs just looking at the trajectory of the tech? Are those demos just outright lies?
They aren't lies, but they are sterile environments. Demonstrating a capability once, under perfect conditions with perfectly sanitized data, is vastly different from enterprise production.
Because the real world is messy.
Unbelievably messy. A demo doesn't have to deal with the entropy of a legacy corporate database that hasn't been cleaned since 2014. A demo doesn't have to handle API rate limits, or unexpected server latency, or a third-party vendor suddenly changing their authentication protocols without telling anyone.
So it's the difference between doing a science experiment in a vacuum chamber versus doing it outside in a hurricane.
That's exactly it. And dealing with that hurricane requires immense human labor. The narrative sold to the board is this workerless, frictionless, autonomous future.
But the reality is quite different.
The reality is just a massive recategorization of human labor. Instead of a frontline worker doing the deterministic task, you now have a highly paid senior software engineer frantically babysitting an LLM.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're writing 100-line system prompts just to beg the model not to hallucinate the Stripe API variables.
That sounds incredibly inefficient.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Often the engineers are working harder and burning more capital to maintain the illusion of automation than if the company had simply optimized their traditional software stack.
Which completely explains the data Vicaray pulled regarding the tech community's reaction. Because the AI didn't just summarize the TechCrunch piece, right?
No, it went much deeper.
Yeah, it scraped Hacker News and Reddit to analyze the sentiment of the actual developers who are living this nightmare, and the numbers are incredibly stark.
What were the exact figures again?
So the reaction was only 5% positive, 15% neutral, and a massive 80% critical.
Wow.
Yeah, but the nuance in why they were critical is fascinating.
Right, it reveals a massive cultural divide between engineering and media.
Exactly. They weren't critical because they disagreed with the problem. They were critical because they despised the phrasing. They largely dismissed the term AI psychosis as cheap, reductive clickbait.
Which makes sense. The engineering community is highly logical and structurally focused. They tend to reject emotional, pathologizing language like that.
Right. To an engineer, calling this a psychosis implies it's some mysterious, irrational mental break.
They view it much more cynically than that. It's not a psychosis, it's just standard executive incompetence, amplified by a new marketing buzzword.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting, because Vicaray highlights this cynical consensus perfectly. The engineers were joking that CEOs were already completely detached from the reality of the engineering floor long before AI even arrived.
Yeah, AI didn't cause the delusion, it just provided a multi-billion-dollar budget for it.
Exactly. They hated the headline, but they enthusiastically endorsed the underlying premise that their bosses have absolutely no idea how this technology actually works.
But if we look past the dark humor on Hacker News, what you're really seeing is systemic burnout.
Oh, for sure.
Because these engineers are the people tasked with fulfilling these hype-driven mandates.
Yeah.
When the CEO goes on CNBC and promises Wall Street that AI will reduce operational overhead by 40% next quarter through one-shot automation.
The engineers are the ones who have to try and build that impossible probabilistic machine.
Exactly. They are buckling under the weight of trying to force a technology to do something it architecturally is not designed to do.
And the accountability flows downstream, doesn't it? When the LLM inevitably hallucinates and the automated workflow breaks, it's not the CEO who takes the blame for overpromising.
No, of course not.
It's the engineering team that gets penalized for under-delivering on the implementation.
Exactly. And this friction isn't just a matter of poor workplace morale either. When you have engineers spending 80% of their time acting as data janitors for an LLM, those labor costs haven't disappeared.
Right, you're still paying them.
You are paying senior developer salaries to maintain a system that was supposed to eliminate costs entirely. And that fundamentally breaks the ROI models these CEOs are presenting to their boards.
Which sets up a massive economic collision. And this is the perfect transition into the financial implications because the forums Vika Ray monitored weren't just venting about their bosses.
No, they were issuing very specific economic warnings.
Yeah. The recurring theme was this danger of FOMO-driven CapEx commitments, capital expenditures.
Right. This is where the executive hallucination becomes a tangible financial liability.
Because the fear of missing out is driving companies across all industries to authorize massive capital expenditures. We are talking about building out proprietary data centers, buying tens of thousands of specialized inference chips.
And locking into massive enterprise software licenses.
Yes. And they are doing all of this without ever validating if the underlying technology can reliably solve their specific business logic at scale.
They are buying the infrastructure for the utopian vision, not the current reality. Executives are terrified that a competitor is going to achieve this mythical one-shot automation first and just price them out of the market.
So they throw billions at the problem.
Yeah, assuming the engineering teams will figure out how to make the probabilistic models behave deterministically later. It is an investment strategy driven entirely by anxiety rather than technical due diligence.
So what does this all mean? Well, if you look at the related articles section that Vika Ray automatically appended to the LLM tracker summary, you can see the financial cracks forming in real time.
Yeah, these aren't abstract warnings anymore. This is hitting the markets right now.
Exactly. For instance, we see a headline about OpenAI's imminent IPO, signaling they need massive public market capital just to sustain the compute costs of this hype cycle.
Right.
Then there's another piece debating whether Anthropic actually has product market fit or if their valuation is just an artifact of venture capital FOMO.
Those headlines really paint a picture of an industry desperately trying to justify the massive influx of capital. But the third headline Vika Ray pulled in is the one that really illustrates how this plays out inside a corporation.
Yes. Amazon's token maxing problem.
Yeah.
When AI adoption metrics backfire.
Oh.
This is such a classic corporate dysfunction story.
Oh, it really is. To justify the massive CapEx spend on AI infrastructure, middle management is given strict quotas for AI adoption within their internal teams.
Right. They have to prove they're actually using the tools they bought.
Exactly. So you get token maxing. Engineers are deliberately forcing unnecessary AI steps into their workflows just to consume tokens and hit the arbitrary adoption metric,
Even if it doesn't make sense.
regardless of whether it actually makes the workflow more efficient.
It's the gamification of a broken metric. You have developers writing scripts to make an LLM summarize code that a human already wrote and understood just so the manager can report to the VP that AI usage is up 20% this month.
Exactly. It's actively destroying productivity to satisfy the hallucinated narrative.
Which is wild.
And eventually the broader market catches on to that inefficiency. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it brings us to the final and most significant related headline on the sidebar. It's the canary in the coal mine for this entire cycle.
Oh, right. Uber's president signals AI spending fatigue. Is the ROI reckoning finally here?
Yeah. When you see leadership at a company like Uber, which is a massive, highly technical, fundamentally data-driven enterprise, publicly signaling spending fatigue on AI infrastructure, it means the narrative is shifting.
The ROI reckoning is arriving.
It is. The era of the visionary CEO writing blank checks based on tech demos is closing, and the era of the CFO auditing the balance sheet has begun.
So the CFO is walking in, looking at the massive CapEx depreciation line, looking at the unchanged operational margins and asking, okay, we bought all the specialized chips, we licensed the frontier models, so where are the profits?
And the engineers are standing there holding the shattered pieces of their ARG pipeline saying, "We tried to tell you an improvisational actor can't do the taxes."
Wow. Yeah.
The bill for the AI psychosis is coming due. The executives made financial commitments based on the assumption that human labor would be eliminated.
But they're realizing the margins aren't improving.
Because they are still paying exorbitant engineering salaries just to keep the human in the loop. It is a classic hype cycle correction. But because of the sheer scale of the infrastructure required for LLMs, it is playing out to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars.
So if we trace this all the way back to Vika Ray's original summary, an AI analyzes the tech sector, observes human CEOs throwing billions at hallucinated capabilities, watches the human engineers burn out trying to build impossible deterministic systems out of probabilistic text generators, and calmly concludes that the leadership has lost its grip on reality.
It is a profound demonstration of why technical literacy at the executive level is no longer optional.
Absolutely.
This raises an important question, really. When leadership relies on marketing narratives instead of engineering realities, the resulting misallocation of capital can cripple a company for a decade.
Yeah, that's a huge risk.
The ability to clearly, calmly articulate the actual unvarnished capabilities and limitations of a technology, to understand the difference between a controlled demo and enterprise production, is becoming the single most valuable skill in the modern economy.
Hmm.
You need critical thinking not just to parse external news, but to survive the mandates coming from your own boardroom.
I think that's exactly the right takeaway. The gap between what a technology can theoretically do in a vacuum and what it requires to function in the messy reality of a business is where all the risk lives. And it's usually the workers on the ground who have to absorb that risk.
Exactly.
Which leads me to a final thought I want to leave you with, something to evaluate in your own day-to-day as you navigate this transition. The next time a shiny, magical new AI tool is introduced at your company with a grand presentation promising that it will seamlessly streamline everything and run entirely autonomously, look very closely at the edges of that system.
Look past the interface.
Right. Find the people who are actually doing the unseen maintenance. Look at who is constantly wrangling the prompts, sanitizing the data, and manually catching the edge cases when the probabilistic model inevitably fails. Ask yourself, are you and your team truly benefiting from the leverage of AI automation, or has your job simply been quietly recategorized? Have you just become the hidden human in the loop, sweating behind the curtain to maintain your boss's hallucination? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.